Good evening, everyone. I'm Lori Lodes. I am the Executive Director at Climate Power. We are a strategic communications campaign focused on building the political will and the public support for bold climate action. I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled, to be joined tonight by talented leaders and activists and organizers doing the important work on the ground in your state right now. Nalini Stamp is from the Working Families Party. Ashley McCrae-Engel from the Indigenous Environmental Network, Yurong Zhang from SEIU Local 1, and Casa Heron from Kentuckians for the Commonwealth and the Climate Justice Alliance. So thank you, ladies, all very much, and excited to talk to you more about what you're seeing and hearing. Tonight, we are going to discuss the last 2 weeks filled with grassroots actions all across the country calling for climate care, jobs, and justice, and the immediate action Congress must take to pass an economic recovery package that puts millions of Americans back to work and at the same time tackles the climate crisis. I feel in my bones that this is our moment. We have such a narrow window to be able to secure real progress on jobs, on care, on climate, on justice, and we've got to take advantage of it. And so that's what we're going to talk tonight with Nalini, Ashley, Yaron, and Casa, because we really all, I think, I will speak for all of us, and you all can tell me if I'm wrong, like we all feel this. And I think we're seeing the energy on the ground that are people all across the country calling for climate care, jobs, and justice, and calling on Congress to pass an economic recovery package that centers people, workers, unions, in getting people back to work. And at the same time, doing that thing that, the existential crisis that it is, tackling climate change. So I want to share with you a petition that our friends at Move On have up. We are hoping that to get as many folks as possible signing on. So please check it out. One of People's Actions members wrote it, and it really tells her story as a Trump supporter, or knowing what we need to do right now is to invest in people and get people back to work. So investing in our country and everything we know we need to do. So before we turn to our panelists, I want you all to take a look at a recovery recess video that we pulled together with our friends at the Green New Deal Network. And so let's play it now.
Protesters say we're at the intersection of several crises right now: racial justice, climate, and unemployment. They're asking for the government to help create jobs that are good for the environment and pay a living wage to all.
Activists rallying across Long Island today. These people here are demanding that federal and state lawmakers pass climate legislation.
Dozens of essential workers are sending a message that they don't want to be left behind.
There are over 120 actions happening today all across the country, from Maine to Texas to Guam to Alaska.
Because we start from the ground up. We start with our people.
Coming to you today from Pembroke, North Carolina.
We're here right in front of Representative Chris Pavis's office.
Born and raised right here in Benham, Kentucky.
Here in Decisive, also known as Anchorage.
In Grant, Luna, and Hidalgo counties.
Erie, Pennsylvania.
I live here in Dover.
New York.
Dayton, Ohio.
We the people, they used to call us.
We're fighting for the world we're living in right now to be livable. The climate crisis is something that people think is still off in the years to come, but it's happening right now.
By keeping the solutions focused on those most impacted, we can ensure a regenerative future for generations to come.
To move away from fossil fuels and to move into the 21st century type of energy.
We need to retrofit our buildings in ways that promote energy efficiency.
We have a prime opportunity in this area to still be a worldwide energy producer. We can just do it in different means, and that's with renewables.
And really truly bring these towns back to what they used to be, minus fossil fuels.
It's just amazing what we could accomplish in this United States if we would just work together and do some things.
Better is possible, and I think that better is non-negotiable at this point.
So I feel like I should first say thank you to all of you, because each one of you was responsible for some piece of what we just saw. There was events from Alaska to New York and Nevada and Arizona and Ohio, Illinois. So what have you all been seeing? We know that tens of thousands of people have been turning out. I've seen the pictures, I've seen the videos in the news, but what has it felt like? What are you feeling on the ground? And so Nalini, I'm gonna start with you.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's lovely to be in this space. I was saying room, but I guess it all feels like rooms these days with everyone. So I'm Nalini from the Working Families Party, and it's been so great to be a part of Recovery Recess. What we've been seeing, everything from creative, beautiful actions like the Jammin' for Jobs that took place in Colorado, West Virginia, and New York, where folks did actual concerts in their state or across their states. We've been seeing folks use the power of community to have town halls and roundtables with their elected officials. And it's just been such a great positive energy of lots of people who are just demanding that we meet the needs, that Congress meets the needs of our communities, that they take care and repair for the past, as well as make our planet, climate, and people resilient for the future.
Casa, what about you? I saw during the video there was an event happening in Kentucky. So I don't know if you were involved with it at all, but what are you seeing in Kentucky?
Yes. Good afternoon, good evening. I'm Casa Heron. I serve as chairperson of Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. And we were so happy and proud to host Congressman John Yarmuth, who serves as House Budget Chair. And he get to share the story of him being able to pass this historic piece of legislation when we send actually terrible folks to Congress. It was an opportunity for us to be in community with each other and really share with our congressmen what we want to see more and how we're excited about the Thrive Act. It's just an exciting time for people to really share and really hold up the things that folks are doing in communities across Kentucky, across the South, and to say, hey, now is the time to really see this and grow this and make an investment in the new generation. Folks are really excited.
Well, and your Congressman Yarmuth, he's an important one with that committee he chairs. So I'm sure
Absolutely.
You'll be spending a lot of time with him in the weeks and months to come. Ashley, what about you? What have you been seeing on the ground?
Yeah, so hello, Kokwe, everyone. My name is Ashley Engel. I'm the Green New Deal organizer with the Indigenous Environmental Network. And we've also been really excited to be a part of Recovery Recess and the Green New Deal Network. We've actually launched our Thrive for Indian Country campaign through IEN. And we've seen actions popping off in Indian country from Alaska to South Dakota to Oklahoma, where I am, all the way to Guam. And really what we're trying to say and what we're trying to, get the message out is that it was Black and Indigenous voters who elected these officials into office. We delivered for them, and now it's time for them to deliver for us. And so I'm really excited to be here today and to talk more about Recovery Recess.
So I just learned that you're from Oklahoma and I'm from Oklahoma. So I'll bring it up at some point later on and we'll talk about it after, because I really like meeting people in progressive politics from Oklahoma, because as you know, there's not a lot. Yaron, what about you?
Yeah, I'm Yaron from SEIU Local 1, and in Illinois, we are part of the statewide Green New Deal Coalition. And so some of our actions during the recovery recess, we held a virtual town hall with elected allies in key Illinois districts, such as Marie Newman, Jan Chakowski, Chuy Garcia, Robert Peters, just to make sure that, our lawmakers heard from people in communities that have borne the brunt of decades of environmental racism, pollution, disinvestment. We held a rally in downtown Chicago to support our coalition partners' fight against a giant warehousing project that would vastly increase the levels of diesel air pollution from commercial trucking and distribution in an area of Chicago that has for decades already been forced to breathe this polluted air. And we have also been seeing our climate activists, particularly youth and students, use digital tools to drive calls and emails and tweets to our legislators. And I think throughout it all, on a sort of different level, there's, we're seeing a different energy. Many of our coalition members are frontline EJ orgs that have been in this fight for decades. They've seen their parents and movement elders take on this fight. So organizing against this ticking clock of climate catastrophe is nothing new to them or to their communities. But what is new is this historic opportunity to take our intersecting crises head on. And in listening to my fellow coalition members, some of whom have been in this fight longer than I've been alive, I hear this recurring theme of just how pivotal this moment is. I think it really can't be overstated that this is truly a once in a generation chance to be at such a critical point where we can envision the world we want, a just and green society, and truly invest in all it takes to build that world.
Like it sounds hyperbolic, but I think what we all know is that it's not, that this really is a moment because of obviously the science, but then we are at this very unique moment with very narrow, majorities in Congress who are wanting change and who are wanting to do something about it. You mentioned, and I think this is what I really wanted to talk about, what makes this moment so different, in that, that you are feeling so much more energy around climate justice, jobs, and care. And you sort of talked about you're on the intersecting crises. And this is something that I think has been growing over, years, but really we are at this different sort of moment. What makes it so different? What are you all seeing that sort of, or I guess, does it feel different? It does to me, and I think Yaron, it does to you. But do you all, what sort of makes this moment different? And Yaron, I'll just turn it back to you because you were starting to get there.
Yeah, well, you put it perfectly. Our country is facing these multiple intersecting crises, and we can no longer pull all of these issues apart, whether it is, climate change or economic inequality or structural racism. The COVID pandemic laid bare these deep structural inequalities and has shown, or is still showing, that our economic system was failing people long before we saw the first COVID cases in the US. And, people understand that even the phrase COVID recovery, it can't mean going back to what was happening pre-COVID, the so-called status quo, because those of us here in this space today know that the status quo was failing millions of people. And so we're living through these crises. We all know people at SEIU. We have thousands of members who are on the front lines, who have been on the front lines for over a year which has given them no rest from COVID or from experiencing catastrophic floods or wildfires. We've seen COVID testing that is inaccessible to undocumented folks and stimulus bills that write out mixed status families. And we've seen COVID hit Black and Brown communities the hardest, and the resulting economic crisis exacerbated in these communities due to decades of systemic racism and oppression. And at the same time, we're seeing, as we're living through these crises, we see a shift in the popular narrative. More and more people are realizing that the way to address all of these intersecting issues is to come together and go after, these biggest polluters, the corporations, the big fish, band together and organize and make it a mass movement. And there's hope in that. There's hope in building this kind of world that people want, that young people want to live in later on, that, involves investing in green industries and care work and community resilience. And I think that's a vision that really inspires people to fight, that people can hold on to.
That word hope, I think we're all starting to get close to feeling it again. Like it seems like we're getting close. Casa, what do you, like the people that you're working with and talking to, what do you think is like motivating right now with, across these issues, and why is it resonating so much at this moment?
I think that we're at a moment, and my sister had the opportunity a couple of months ago to interview Angela Davis, and she said the same thing. Like my sister asked her, what does this moment feel like across, the span of your lifetime? And she said, this is the moment. It has never felt this way before. And I think that there's an awakening. There are way many of us who really understand the inequities that have been baked into every part of our country's infrastructure, from how our government works, from how our institutions like universities further the inequities and damage, and how asinine it is that corporations have more rights than hardworking people. The time to act is now. And though everybody may not understand the complex colonizing history of this country, people know it because they see it, they feel it, they experience it to some degree. And at this moment, the complexities are converging into what I think is an opportunity to really create the democracy that we were taught about as children. It's our time right now to really create that. And folks across the country, in every state, probably in every precinct, are standing up and demanding justice in all the ways.
That gets me excited. And I like that you talked about it as an opportunity, because I think that's what I feel like it is, right? Like there is this huge opportunity in front of us to change the way things have been working and make it work for all of us. So Ashley, this is not your first fight. You know that these things, like, this is not going to be over in a week or a month. How are we going to keep up this momentum for the next, what we expect to be at least a few months? And how do we sort of channel all of the energy and at the same time keep it going?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think just building on what Casa and Euron were saying, previously, is that, this really is an unprecedented moment. Here in Oklahoma, for example, we're strapped by the oil industry, and that's really a singular economy. But still at the same time, we're seeing everybody losing their jobs. And everybody in my community, is being really harshly impacted by the COVID pandemic. And so, I think bringing this fight down to the ground, making it connect to the people and the communities on the ground who are being impacted by all of these multiplying crises, these intersecting crises that we're all faced with, I think is the way to really continue to build that momentum. And so, Recovery Recess, that was a great opportunity for us to really, build that momentum and get the pulse going. But really throughout these next crucial months, we have to continue doing that work of organizing our grassroots communities, making sure that those who are most impacted are brought and centered into these conversations, and continue fighting for all the things that we need to see.
Nalini, sorry, I forgot I was muted. Nalini, so President Biden has introduced the American Rescue Plan, or passed the American Rescue Plan, and it's starting to provide relief to people and the recovery that Americans are very desperate for. But that we need to do more. How do you think we can get folks back to work quickly in good union jobs, and at the same time address the climate crisis? What can Congress do? What do you think that, obviously the president has introduced now the American Jobs Plan, but what do you think this is going to look like over the next few months?
Yeah, well, I'm super excited and happy that the American Rescue Plan did pass. It was one of the largest investments in our communities, that not one single dollar went to corporations or corporate America. And so that is a great start, but obviously it is the ceiling and the entry level, and we need to go all the way. I'm sorry, not the ceiling, it's the floor. I forget what's with what now. We need to go all the way to the ceiling. The American Jobs Plan that President Biden has released is a great start. It is one of the best labor bills we've seen because it includes the Protect the Right to Organize Act, the PRO Act, which allows workers to organize for dignity in their workplace, because every worker deserves to be in a labor union. But unfortunately, it doesn't meet the scale of the crises that and the moment that we're in, which is why, we are part of the Green New Deal network, and we are pushing and have been pushing through Recovery Recess the Thrive Act, which is a 7-pillar program to create 15 million good union jobs in this country that are care jobs, climate jobs, jobs that are centered around justice as well for our communities. That's what we need. That's the scale of what we need. Because what we don't want to see is, we saw this in 2008. I am this many years old to remember that we didn't see a lot of the crises that came after the 2008 recession until 2010, where folks were massively evicted out of their homes because they couldn't afford it, right? It came years later. And so when we're looking at things like, we haven't had a real eviction moratorium, people are still getting evicted, and then they have back pay for 12 months plus. When we're looking at the economy before COVID was still bad for millions of people. When we're looking at Black, Brown, Indigenous folks have never had equity in this country, right? It's not just about equality, it's equity. That's what we are looking for with the Green New Deal Network and the Working Families Party and many other organizations within that. And so we hope we have a lot of different co-sponsors, and we're going to continue to organize to get people onto the Thrive Act. But regardless, whatever passes, it must at least have $10 trillion a year to create jobs. Sorry, $10 trillion for 10 years to create jobs. We need to be creating jobs for the long term. They need to be good, clean climate jobs and care jobs, because we need to continue to make sure we're caring for our communities. I'm sick and tired of our communities starting GoFundMes, taking care of each other when things go wrong, from Puerto Rico to Texas to New York. In the beginning of the pandemic, we always need to take care of one another. And so it's about time that Congress take action and act. And the last thing I'll say, I know I've been talking for a long time, but we also need to move as an ally with our Indigenous communities away from consultation and actually have to move to consent. We need to make sure that Congress, in whatever packages that are happening, move from a consultation only process to consent. And we have to make sure that federal land is being given back as well.
I was taking notes while you were talking. Because I was underlining things that I agreed with. I want to first go back. I'm going to go back to one thing you said at the beginning, and then I'm going to come back to the end. You're on labor, former proud union worker from SEIU. Talk to me about, for I think a long time, politics has tried to pit the environmental movement against the labor movement. And we all know, because I think a lot of us have union experience, that it's just not true, that we're all like in it together. So can you talk a little bit that from your perspective at SEIU Local 1, how you see all of this fitting together?
Yeah, well, first of all, we know that jobs versus environment is a false dichotomy. We must have both. So protecting people and the environment must go hand in hand. It's, of course, in the interest of the wealthy elites and corporations to divide the working class. We've seen this all throughout history. They divide the working class by pitting social movements against each other with their divisive messaging. And fortunately, we're at a point where we're better than that. And we can see that corporate greed harms us all. And in particular, it disproportionately harms Black, Brown, Indigenous, and poor communities. It's no surprise that the same corporations that widen their profit margins by underpaying and overexploiting their workers to line the pockets of billionaires are also the ones who profit from pollution and over-extraction of natural resources and imperialism, which again disproportionately harms Black, Brown, Indigenous, and poor communities. We've heard and we know that just 100 companies have been the source of more than 70% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, and the US military is one of the world's biggest polluters. And so we have an opportunity to, instead of carrying out destruction and pollution in forever wars overseas, we can invest substantial money right here in the US toward life affirming, climate mitigating, unemployment ending, community sustaining initiatives that build a better and more resilient world for all of us. Because we know that, from a labor perspective, the jobs of the future are not going to be in extractive, volatile industries like fossil fuels. We know they're going to be in renewable energy, climate solutions, and as Nalini said, the care economy. The renewables industry is already the fastest growing job sector. We know key investors on Wall Street who have been propping up the fossil fuel industry are now jumping ship as they realize how unsustainable and volatile the market is. And so rather than being a strain on the economy, we have solutions that work toward tackling climate change and inequality that can power our economy for decades to come. Climate disasters that cause massive damages and death are largely preventable if we are able to invest upfront in reducing vulnerabilities in our communities that are hit hardest by investing in care work and other types of infrastructure. And there's a place for labor within these movements to ensure that workers in these in pollutive industries have a just transition. So when dirty power plants are being shut down, there needs to be a plan for workers at those plants to have a just transition away from the fossil fuel industry. And so this is where labor unions can play a supportive role. Unions can ensure that these workers get training in transferable skills to building solar panels or wind turbines or retrofitting buildings to bring them into the modern age. Or manufacturing or driving electric vehicles like buses, using green and energy efficient methods to clean large downtown office buildings, and caring for our communities through home care, child care, nursing home and healthcare and public health workers. So all of this work will be created and supported by this modernization of our society that also tackles climate change. And they should be good paying jobs with good benefits and opportunities for workers to organize. So that's where unions and environmental advocates can really come together and build something great. Environmental and labor movements know this, and that's why you see unions teaming up with climate and racial justice organizations to win something transformational that works for all of us.
Yeah. Casa, so from your point of view, when Yaron sort of touched on this about the types of jobs that would be created, what do you think that looks like? We obviously know that 10 million people are still unemployed because of the pandemic, that 5 million at least have left the workforce entirely. So when we're talking about getting back to people back to work, what does that look like, and how does advancing justice fit into that?
So I was beaming when Yaron was talking because I'm thinking about all the things that are happening in Kentucky that oftentimes people don't get to hear about. So for instance, the two of my fellow Kentuckians were on the video, and they're coal miners, or used to be coal miners, 2 generations of a son and father. And the son lost his job. As much as in Kentucky, people have been workers, and you learn a trade and you're told that you'll get a job in that industry, and you want to keep working that job because that's what you know, that's what's paid the bills. And unfortunately, our folks in our community have been fed lies about how much the coal industry is going to continue hiring people. Fortunately, some of those co-workers who have lost their jobs have had opportunities for more job training in other industries. So now they're learning how to retrofit housing and help increase energy efficiency in people's houses and their neighbors. And that's also happening because we have rural co-ops who are investing in on-bill financing opportunities for their customers to really invest in their homes. And what that looks like on the federal level is right now there's a plan to invest $10 billion to rural co-ops to help them retire debt. That's not enough. There's a co-op here in Kentucky that has $2 billion itself in debt that needs to be retired. And so what we're asking for and demanding is not just $10 billion, but $100 billion to put in rural co-ops that exist across the country, where regular people have control over their energy, and they're reinvesting that money into their communities for renewable energy, for broadband services, for worker transitions, for bill relief for their customers. Another example, I'm getting really in the weeds right now. So there's another example by which and what we are calling for with the Climate Justice Alliance is for really our federal agencies to really get in the weeds with us. So there was money that was allocated as a part of this WIC program, this WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program. So people get coupons to shop at farmers markets who also benefit or have a benefit of WIC. And in this last package in the American Rescue Plan, there was an additional, I don't know, maybe $35 a person, I think, added to this WIC benefit so that people can shop and get food. What they also did was added grocery stores to that benefit. Well, in a community like mine, or in communities in Kentucky, all we're doing is subsidizing Walmarts. We have whole counties in our communities that don't have grocery stores. So as we think about this benefit that we're providing for everyday Americans, we have to be really intentional about the investments that we're making. So to make sure that money is really being invested in local communities and not leaving our communities. So we have an opportunity right now to really seed projects and innovation that's happening on the ground. And we have to be intentional about what we want the outcome to be. We're giving people rent relief, but they're giving that money to slumlords. We've got to figure out a way to really actually invest in housing that's owned by local people, that people we're able to put people back to work, and that we're literally shifting our economy. We have to divest from the bad, and we have to invest in the good. And that's what folks across the country, frontline workers and communities, are demanding in this moment.
I like how you said it. We have to be intentional about our outcomes, because I think that is so important, not only in the, how the programs are invested in, but then how they're implemented and what that actually looks like. Ashley, I promised I would get back to Oklahoma. So Casa was talking about, the father and son coal workers. I'm from Oklahoma, so obviously I have family in the oil and gas business. So what do you see, and it's not just Oklahoma, and it's not just Kentucky, it's Texas, it's New Mexico, where communities are very tied in to fossil fuels. What do you think, what do you say to people when you're talking about like this transition and what it really means?
Yeah, so I definitely relate to having family in the oil and gas industry. My own father actually dropped out of 8th grade to become a roughneck on the oil field, and so he's actually retired out of that economy. And so really what we see here is that the oil and gas industry really is preying on our people, especially our indigenous communities. And so a lot of our tribal nations are really forced into these oil and gas jobs, but they're not sustainable. And not only that, for indigenous communities, we also see that these oil and gas jobs, they really put us in a position where we have to choose between upholding and living our indigenous lifeways and practicing our culture and putting forth our knowledge, and also putting food on the table. And so when we have a just transition that puts us to a regenerative economy and that's rooted in indigenous principles, we can really see that we don't have to choose between making sure we have a roof over our head and living the way that our ancestors and future generations really want us to live. And so, really emphasizing that these jobs are not only good, sustainable, long-lasting jobs, but that they'll also make sure that our environment stays healthy and clean for future generations to come. And one of the things that I really like to emphasize when we're having this conversation about, what will we do? What will we do for work? And we often see in these oil field jobs that these jobs are not long lasting, that they're very temporary. My own father has to put together a whole portfolio of different job sites that he's going to visit just so that he can have enough revenue to sustain the family over a period of a year. And so really just, debunking some of those myths about where the jobs actually are, what the jobs actually look like, and what the jobs could actually be, I think is the way to move forward. And recognizing that, these companies are preying upon our communities because we're vulnerable. And so we really need to go ahead and stand up against these companies, stand up against, different legislators who would be backed by these companies, and really stand for future generations, our communities, and Unchimaka, our grandmother Earth.
That's awesome. So excited. Oklahoma. Don't get to talk about it enough. Nalini, there has been, American Jobs Plan, infrastructure. What is infrastructure? What isn't infrastructure? What is infrastructure?
This is my favorite question. Infrastructure to me, to us, is what is a public or should be a public and common good. So, for instance, during the New Deal, art, writing, theater was public infrastructure, which is why we had the Federal Theater Arts and Writers Project. Now, when we think about how in rural communities people have to drive 40 minutes to an hour for hospitals, care is infrastructure, which means everything from universal childcare, which we should have in this country, to home health aides. My family has had to switch so many times home health aides because of the conditions that these private little corporations that have home health care workers put their workers into. Infrastructure is, yes, our bridges and our roads and the traditional things that we get by, but it's also the things that are going to bring us into a resilient future. It's trains. When are we getting high-speed rail? I just want to take the train across the country. I just want to take the train.
Yes. I put on my T-shirt. I put on my bicycle for that reason. Transit is infrastructure.
Yes. Trains are infrastructure. Bikes are infrastructure. I mean, at this point, there are things that are not infrastructure, like the police and stuff, which is why we should defund and create a new term of public safety. But really, the reality is that its infrastructure is what is the common good. Our education is infrastructure, right? How we protect our climate is infrastructure. So it's learning from the original stewards of our land who actually know how to, who actually know and have old practices around wildfires. We have to make sure that our wetlands and our forestation, all of that stuff, that our coastal lines from New York to the bayou are protected. And that means that we need people to actually be paid and have their labor to care for our community. So for me, infrastructure is anything that will keep us resilient. And so it changes a lot. I still think right now that arts and theater and all of that also has to be included because artists have lost so much. Working artists, not just the big celebrities that are taking milk baths during the pandemic, but actually working artists and people who are out there have not had jobs and they have no pathway to see jobs again. So infrastructure to me is the good things that we need for each other and for our communities.
Well, it's been
Lori,
such a Oh, go ahead, Casa. Go ahead.
Lori, if you don't mind, I just wanted to add that in Kentucky, and I know in other states in the country, people still need access to clean water and broadband. We have folks in our community that are paying for internet service, and it still sucks. And so people's children are not being able to log on to class because they still have bad broadband or not at all. And then access to good food is a basic need that many of us don't have. And right now, our federal government is calling to invest, I think, $50,000 to help Black farmers, to invest in Black farmers. We need Black farmers to have their debt taken away. We need real investment into support and putting land back into the hands of people that actually used to have it, and the folks that are going to be good stewards of the land. That's what infrastructure looks like to me.
I love it, Casa. I think the conversation has just been sort of mind-blowing to me over the past couple of weeks of like, what is infrastructure? No, the electricity grid's not infrastructure. And it's like 220 people died in Texas because of an outdated grid that the folks responsible were only caring about the profits, were not caring about actually doing the work to make it resilient and to maintain it. And then for months, people did not have water. Millions of people did not have water for weeks and weeks. And so I'm really glad, Casa, you also talked about drinking water, because one of the things that the American Jobs Plan does is 100% we're getting the lead pipes out across the country. And I will say, I think that's what we want to see more of, right? Is like, we're going to deal with the entire problem, not just a portion of it, but 100%.
Yeah.
So, excited to see more of like, let's actually talk about infrastructure and what that means, because I don't think that's the other, I don't think those who are denying that there's a problem come out looking too good when they try to, oh no, the electricity grid, broadband, people don't need it. They're doing a lot of disservice to the people they represent. Ashley or Yaron, what do you all think on this whole question of like, what is infrastructure?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the debate around what infrastructure is, when here in Oklahoma we have a critical infrastructure bill that actually makes it illegal to protest against oil and gas. Yet at the same time, our bridges are literally collapsing in our major metropolitan areas in the middle of the day. And we also don't have access to broadband in our rural areas. And some of our waters, our systems are still out of date. And so really, I want to say, ultimately, people in the real world, in places like Oklahoma, in the South, in the Midwest, we're not focused on the question of semantics. What we're focused on is whether or not this government can actually deliver for us in tangible ways that impact our lives. So Republicans can focus their case on trying to redefine that word, but it's really not a case that's going to hold water with the public. And the Republicans are debating semantics to distract from the fact that they would rather continue lining the pockets of billionaires than create good paying jobs for their constituents and the people who would really benefit the most from these policies.
I love it. So talk to me, you sort of got to this, like it's semantics, but talk to me about the politics of all of this, right? The oil and gas lobby is going to be doing everything they can to stop it. I think we have seen, Senator, sorry, Casa, your home state Senator Mitch McConnell say that not a single Republican is going to vote for it. What does that, is bipartisanship possible? What do you think is going to happen? What do the politics look like? And then how do we win the politics? I will start with Nalini.
I think, here's the thing. This is critical and people need it, and people do not want to see politics take up we got to be friendly with each other, or what we need, especially after what we've seen in the last decade come from elected officials. And so the reality is that the people want to see action being taken, no matter what that means. Whether that means it has to go with eliminating the filibuster, whether that means that things have to go through reconciliation, it's by any means necessary that our politicians need to get the job done. They need to get the job done, and our voices will be heard. It is critical. They can try to throw the book, but the best part of the weird parliamentary procedure is that there's ways to get what we want. There are ways to get what we want and a pathway to really win. I think the thing that we need to make sure is that the Democrats those who are in the pockets of corporations or who are talking to their buddies in the oil and gas industry, we have to hold their feet to the fire. Because it's really easy to be like, oh, well, the Republicans won't do this. But the reality is that Democrats have the votes by a small margin, but have the votes to get through and have parliamentary procedural laws that I will not geek out on right now to get the work done. They could have ignored the Senate parliamentarian for 15. They decided not to. The people are watching. Right? They needed to get that relief plan and that rescue plan out the door so that we can focus on long-term recovery. And now this is the center of the ring. This is the fight. It is long-term recovery. And I know that I could probably say for all of us just fundamentally agree that we must go big, go bold, and by any means necessary. But again, all of the different tools. And so if not one Republican votes for it, then we got to remind them. And it's like, folks' jobs like the Working Families Party and others, when 2022 comes around and it's midterms, when the other party, usually the ruling party, takes over, that's when we got to make sure that folks are reminded, because I think about 60% of Americans believe that Republicans voted for the rescue plan. So we as organizers have work to do. Yeah, 60% of Republicans believe that Republicans voted for it. And we have to just remind them that, no. They didn't do, what I'm about to say. So there you go.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm just happy that I did not say the word reconciliation, that I did not bring it up, because usually I'm the one that's nerding out about it. So, but second, I'm really glad you talked about 2022. And you brought up Democrats. Do you think there is or what do you think the danger is if they don't deliver for their voters? The American Rescue Plan has been huge, but is that enough? Are people like, I'm okay, we're all good now? What do you think, Casa?
We haven't really talked about HR 1 and all the work that's going into making sure that our democracy is stronger. So if Democrats don't stand up, if Democrats don't lead, they were elected to lead. If they don't lead in this moment, they will get primaried. Folks are not playing. It's time for progressives to double down on our message. It's not for us to be soft or to wane for what it is that we want. And we can't be afraid to talk to each other and engage. And particularly in the South, white people have to talk to white people. I have to talk to the preachers and deacons in my community and to folks who aren't engaged. And white people have to talk to white people. Since the insurrection, I've heard one person say, those were my people. Everybody wants to dismiss them. And we have this culture of othering that is not going to lead us to co-governance. We are supposed to have a government that's by the people and for the people. And we can't have that if we're not engaging each other and if we're not helping us, of the 99% of us, to see that we're more connected than we are different. We will lose. We will continue to lose if we leave people out. Folks are not being heard across the country, across the 120 counties in Kentucky. Folks are not being heard. And what that means is that they don't come out. They don't engage. So we have to be intentional again about connecting with people, not just talking to them, but listening to them and helping them to see how we're all connected and how we're not going to get free if we don't learn how to love and dance and sing together.
Okay, that was amazing. And we only have just a minute or so left. So final question, what's next? What's next on the ground? What are you going to be doing? What are you excited about? What do you think, is in store over the next couple of months? Yaron, I'm going to start with you, putting you on the spot first.
Thanks. What's next for the next couple of months? Well, Many things. I mean, this is a once in a generation opportunity, as we've said, many times on this call, and we really have to ramp up our outreach. We have, a bold plan to engage members of Congress and encourage them, call on them to go big and bold on a progressive recovery. Organizing is all about building. And so how are we building in this moment? Our electeds have gotten calls and letters. They've gotten banner jobs outside their offices during the recess. So if they thought that was a lot, good news. We can and we will go bigger than that because, there's so much more at stake. We're all about raising our collective voice, and we have to make sure we continue building and keeping up the energy and activism until Congress acts.
That's awesome. Ashley, how else can people get involved?
Yeah, so you can definitely follow all of our organizations, the Green New Deal Network and Climate Power on social media to make sure you're hearing about more ways to be involved. At IEN, we've launched our Thrive for Indian Country campaign. So you can visit www.ienearth.com/thrive to link in more about that. But really just recognizing that this is the time to build people power. We're the ones who won this election for Joe Biden. We're the ones who are, demanding that Congress goes big and bold. And so we're the ones that really have the power to make sure that we're moving into a good future that really includes all of our communities, and that will be something that future generations can be happy about. And so the recess for us, it is a point for us to build from. It really is more of a beginning than an end. And we really have to keep up this energy and all of this activism until Congress acts and delivers.
Casa, what about for you? How can people get involved?
It's budget time. It's budget time in local communities, and local governments are getting these large checks the same way in which some Americans are getting large checks. And it's our opportunity right now to tell our metro government, to tell our school boards, to tell our universities, all of whom are getting money from the American Rescue Plan. We have to tell them how we want that money invested. And we have to tell them that we want the money invested in local people so that we can actually change the trajectory of the next generation. Now is not the time to be quiet. Now is the time to ask questions and to really plant the vision for what we want to see and demand that our elected officials either get behind that plan or get out of the way.
Nalini, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, one is that I would be remiss, we did not say that undocumented people were not included in the American Rescue Plan. And so I do think that people have to fight for locally, like the win that New Yorkers had with a $2.1 billion fund for excluded workers, which they won after a 22-day hunger strike of those excluded workers. So just shout out to as a child of somebody who was undocumented most of my life, it's something that's really important to me. And yeah, we have to make sure that this jobs plan, they want to pass it before August recess. And they want to pass one part of recovery. And so we have to do everything from now until August recess to escalate. This was the beginning of a few months long plan. And we need to make sure that they just go big and bold and hold their feet to the fire. And folks can get involved as well by texting Thrive to 30403. Right now it patches you through your member of Congress or your senator to tell them to pass the Thrive Act.
Awesome. And I think everybody sort of, the through line for all of this is go big, go bold, go now, reach out to your member of Congress, take action through any of the organizations. As I said at the beginning, there's a great Move On petition that should be at the bottom of your screen that's demanding just that, to go big on jobs, on climate, on justice, and on care. So anything that you can do to get the word out and to get action and to get your members of Congress listening is so important at this moment. And ladies, I will probably put you on the spot and demand, as Nalini said, we have a short amount of time before to get this done before August recess. So maybe we can all come back together in a month or two and give an update on where things are and what's next and how we're going to get it over the line. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.